Hey, sixth grade, how's it going? Happy Thursday, September 3rd, 2020. Teacher Joseph here. It is conversation class. Today we're going to talk about Olympic sports. That topic was kind of in the news a couple of years ago when Brazil hosted the Olympic Games, right? So you might know a little bit about this topic. We're going to talk more about it today, learn some vocabulary words, do a couple of activities, and you also talked about your least and favorite sports. We compared what you liked and what you didn't like, and we talked a little bit more about this subject. So, to begin class, what we did was Mr. Joseph was able to show you guys the vocabulary for the day, but in kind of an interesting way, right? There's some letters that are missing. I wonder if you can take a look at the screen and find out which letters are missing. Try to see if you can guess those sports. Well, the first one's done for you, boxing. Number 2. Ooh, this one might be kind of difficult. Anybody know what it is? Do you know any of the numbers? If you think you know, why don't you pause the video, maybe take a screenshot of the activity, and write down the words. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the answers in just a second. Okay, so the answers, boys and girls, are found on your inside of your book, okay, on page, let me show you the page number, okay, inside of your book on page 46. So if you take a look at page 46, you see all the vocabulary words for this lesson right here on the screen. Okay, those are the same words that were inside of the activity from before. What I'd like you to do is just listen to the words and repeat them after me. Number 1, long jump. Number 2, gymnastics. Number 3, rowing. 4, archery. 5, high jump. 6, wrestling. 7, hurdles. 8, weightlifting. 9, fencing. 10, boxing. Okay, so all those words, boys and girls, are the same words that are also on the screen, okay? Have you played any of these sports before? Has anyone done gymnastics or weightlifting or, I don't know, wrestling? Now, these are pretty common sports in the United States and elsewhere in the world. So what we're going to do is we're just going to take a look at the pictures just to understand those words a little bit better, and then I'll show you the vocabulary words from the previous activity. Number 1, again, was long jump. Okay, so you can see that picture on the screen. Number 1, the guy's kind of like jumping in the air. What they do is they step behind a line and they take a running start and they jump to see how long that they can jump. That's why it's called long jump. Number 2, gymnastics. You can see that girl is on a beam where she's doing some type of a jump or a flip. Number 3 is rowing. This is usually done with a team, and the team members take turns. They kind of go together, they collaborate to row down the body of water and eventually compete for the win. Number 4, archery. Now, Mr. Joseph actually had done this sport when he was younger. All right, I actually had what they call a bow and arrow. This bow and arrow, pictured in number 4, is used by the archer to try to get the arrow as far as possible or as accurate as possible. Number 5 is high jump. I used to love doing high jump when I was a kid. We would do this not only during recess, but also in a track and field event in a sport that I was participating in as a kid. Number 6 is wrestling. I also did wrestling in 4th, 5th, and 6th grade. I didn't really like wrestling very much, mostly because of the tight uniform that had to be used, right? Number 7, hurdles. I've never done hurdles, I can tell you that, but you can see the woman in the picture is jumping over that hurdle, okay, that obstacle. Number 8 is weightlifting. Mr. Joseph has done weightlifting. He was in a club in high school, and then he also has joined a couple of weight room facilities during his years, right? Number 9, fencing. So they're using something called swords, and they also have some protective equipment. And then number 10 is boxing. I can tell you I've never done number 9 or 10, fencing or boxing. Which one of these sports have you done? Which one of these sports would you like to do? Let's listen to the description on the screen. Okay, it says, the Olympic sports are the world's biggest sporting event, and they take place every 4 years. They are about creating friendships among nations and getting athletes to compete in a fair way. There are the Summer Games and the Winter Games. Each time, the Olympics take place in a different city. Phoebe, Alex, and Patrick are in the year 2016, and this time their Olympics are in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Now, before we continue with learning about what Alex, Phoebe, and Patrick are doing, I'd like you just to remember those vocabulary words because we're going to come back to this exercise in just a second. Okay? Let me show you on the screen what we did today. All right, we were able to do some pretty interesting activities. In addition to learning about the vocabulary, we did something called a Padlet. Now, the link will be inside of the video notes, so you can actually click on this link and see what your classmates had created. But all the students were able to add some comments, all right? We were answering 3 different questions. The first one was, what's your favorite sport? You can see that Gloriana responded, I love running and cycling with my family. Dylan responded that he likes swimming. Suleen, I like biking and roller skating. Samantha also says that she likes biking. Yada likes dance. Lionel and Gabriel like swimming. Santiago and Fabian like basketball. Naomi also likes dance. Mario put that he likes ping pong, badminton, and or baseball. Mariana put swimming. Lionel also swimming. Crystal, soccer. Evans, basketball. Dulce, gymnastics. Diego, skating. Interesting. Samira likes swimming. Raymond, his favorite sport is basketball. All right, the second class had to write in complete sentences. Eric, I like swimming. Stephanie, my favorite sport is basketball. Carlos, my favorite sport is basketball. I've seen a couple of students play basketball. Isabella, I like to play badminton. Sebastian, swimming. Marianne Hill, volleyball. Oscar, basketball. Ana Laura, swimming. Jimena Granja, basketball. Christian, table tennis as well. And Marianha, my favorite sport is dancing. So we had a lot of really interesting sports there, okay? Thank you, boys and girls, for your participation. I appreciate it. I think you really enjoyed this exercise. Now, when we talk about things that we like, we also have to kind of talk about things that we don't like. In other words, our least favorite activities, all right? You can say that Mr. Joseph doesn't really like basketball. I have a lot of bad memories of basketball as a kid. Okay, now I'm not going to read all the responses that are on the screen, but you can see that some of the students were responding a lot of the same sports, but just in a different way, right? It's interesting. Some people put sports that they've done, and some people put sports that they've never done, or maybe they put something that they had seen on the screen. I'm sorry, on the TV, right? So we can kind of tell what students like, what they don't like. We were also able to describe why we don't like them. So let's look at Sebastian's response. He doesn't like American football because it's difficult to play, and soccer because at the end, all the people start to fight. Interesting. This one from Carlos is pretty interesting. I don't really like golf because I don't understand or know the rules. Okay, you can see other responses from students. Samira, I definitely agree with you. Baseball is very difficult. Yeah, Eric, it can be very tiring. Running up and down the court when you're playing soccer, right? All right, so lots of really cool responses, boys and girls. Thank you very much for responding to that. If you'd like to respond, again, you can click on that link or scan the QR code to put your own response there later on, okay? I'd like you to go back to page 46, and what we're going to do is listen to the story to understand a little bit more about which sports that the 3 main characters in our books are going to see in the Olympic Games, okay? So Go back to page 46. Try to listen for those sports that we already talked about. And let's also answer these questions. So we're going to actually read the questions before we even hear the transcript, right? Practice 2, number 1 says, which sports does each person mention? Number 2, what does Patrick suggest to his friends? Number 3, why doesn't Phoebe like his idea? Number 4, what do they finally agree to do? All right, we were able to answer some of these questions in class and then talk about which sports that they were going to end up watching at the Olympics. So listen, please, and answer those questions inside of your book on page 46.
Student's Book, page 46. 2. Read, listen, and answer the questions.
The Olympic Games are the world's biggest sporting event, and they take place every 4 years. They are about creating friendship among nations and getting athletes to compete in a fair way. There are the Summer Games and the Winter Games. Each time, the Olympics take place in a different city. Phoebe, Alex, and Patrick are in the year 2016, and this time the Olympics are in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil.
All right, so listen for the answers to those questions. You can write them while you're listening.
Whoa! So, where are we now?
I don't know, but it's a beautiful place, that's for sure.
It's Rio de Janeiro in Brazil, and we're here during the Olympics.
Wow! So maybe we can go and see some of the events.
Sure. You know what? I'd love to see the boxing or the wrestling.
That's typical of you, Pat.
All right, so we already have the answer to the first one. I'm not going to stop this any more times, just this time. Just so you're understanding, we're already writing the answer for number 1. Okay, it says, which sport does each person mention? Right, the first person that's talking is Patrick, so listen very carefully to what he's going to mention.
I'd love to see the boxing or the wrestling.
That's typical of you, Patrick.
Go ahead and write that down.
Boxing and wrestling.
What would you like to see, Phoebe?
A volleyball game. I love games with balls. And you, Alex?
Now we're going to hear Alex.
Well, let me see. Archery? Fencing? Weightlifting? It's so difficult, isn't it? Oh, I know. I'd like to see the rowing competition.
Alex has a lot of interest, doesn't he? Just like some of you students. Did you get all the answers? We'll check them at the end.
Okay, so we're going to see different things. Phoebe, you go and see your volleyball. Alex can go and watch the rowing, and I think I'll go to the wrestling.
Oh, come on, that's boring. We're friends.
That's right. We should go and see something together.
Okay, so volleyball first, then wrestling, and finally the rowing.
Yep, sounds good to me.
Great, let's go.
Okay, those last 3 questions, number 2, 3, and 4, were completed in the last 20 seconds of that audio. So hopefully you got the answers. Does anybody know the answers? What we're going to do is we're going to write them on the screen, okay, just so we can understand a little bit more about what the students like to do, okay? So number 1, what is number 1? Which sport does each person mention? Well, we already know that Patrick likes boxing and wrestling, right? So let's actually write that down. And then Phoebe mentioned that she likes volleyball. Alex mentioned a couple of things, right? Initially, 3 of the first ones were archery, fencing, and weightlifting. And then he mentioned rowing at the way end. Number 2, what does Patrick suggest to his friends? Well, he suggests that they go see different things, right? Because they all want to see different things. However, Phoebe doesn't like his idea, does she? What does she suggest? Well, she says that's boring. If they go see different things, they should stick together, right? So, they eventually, number 4, they finally agree on going to see volleyball, then rowing, and then wrestling. Okay, that way each one of the students gets to see what they want to see. Okay, did you get those answers, boys and girls? Do we need to write them on the screen? Go ahead and pause the video and check to see if your answers are on the screen, okay? So let's just put those answers on the screen. Make sure that you have those on there. If you already have the answers written down, you checked them in class, you can go ahead in the video about 2 minutes. Okay, let's just put those answers on the screen. Number 1, we have, so Patrick wanted to see, let's see, he said boxing and wrestling. You'll notice that wrestling, boys and girls, has a W at the beginning. That W is silent, okay? We don't say it because WR words in English are completely silent, okay? That W is silent. We only pronounce the R, right? Alex says that he would like to see, here we go, archery and fencing and weightlifting and rowing. Okay. Did you get all those? He had said 4 of them, didn't he? All right. And then our last student said that he wanted to do it's Phoebe. She said she wanted to do just volleyball. Okay. All right, good. That's good enough. What did they finally end up doing, boys and girls? Well, they finally ended up going to see the volleyball, rowing, and wrestling. So I'm just going to put like a star right next to each one of those, just so you guys can understand which ones that they finally picked. Let's pick like a lightning bolt. All right. So they finally decided on volleyball, rowing, and wrestling. All right. So wrestling was the first one, and volleyball and rowing. That way, every student got to see what they wanted to see. Okay. Those are called compromises. When we compromise, boys and girls, we're able to see other people's opinions and then also understand where they're coming from. All right, let me write that word on the screen. Compromise. Okay, looks just like the word in Spanish, compromise. All right, so let's continue. What we're going to do now is we're going to talk a little bit more about those Olympic sports. Now, if you Google Olympic sports, you're going to come up with a whole bunch of sports, right? They actually call them disciplines because some of them aren't considered sports. You'll see some of the ones that we already mentioned, like gymnastics and boxing, but then you'll also see some like sports climbing, artistic swimming, track and field, football, sometimes called soccer. There's that fencing one more time. Modern pentathlon. Okay. Judo, badminton. A couple of the students mentioned badminton in class. There's archery again, weightlifting, taekwondo. So it looks like there's a mix of different sports around the world, right? Figure skating. That was always one of my favorites as a family. We always used to watch it as a family. Ice hockey. Shooting. Beach volleyball. That's probably a summer Olympics. And then here we have snowboarding, which is then the winter Olympics, right? You can tell that they're different because one is in a very warm environment and the other one's in a very cold environment. Okay. Curling. I've actually done curling one time. It was very, very interesting. If you don't know what that is, take a look on Google and see what that is. Go to a video. It's a pretty cool sport. Skiing. Mr. Joseph used to do skiing when he lived in the United States. Now, cricket is not common in the US, but it is common in places like Great Britain, Australia, New Zealand, other countries that were colonized by the British. Okay, that's the end of the list, but you can see there's a whole bunch of different sports that we could learn about and that you could even play one day. All right, now let's go back to that Padlet. The last question that was on the Padlet was, have you ever watched the Olympic Games? Okay, and I also wanted you to kind of say what sport you would watch if you wanted to watch the Olympic Games. There were quite a few no's. A lot of people have not watched them. Actually, during the discussion, a lot of people didn't have anything to say about the Olympic Games except maybe the sports that they'd like to try. So, I would really encourage you guys to check out some of these sports. We will continue to learn about them in the future, but thank you very much for coming to class. If you want a little bit more of an exercise, go ahead and take a look at this exercise right here. I'm not going to require it or even give you the answers for it, but take a screenshot of what's on the screen and see if you can try to figure out what activity 2 is. Put those words in the correct blank. All right, boys and girls, thank you for being very attentive today and for your attendance in class, and we will talk to you soon.